Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to get started. Welcome to the third episode of Meet the Candidates with Camila. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the people who have been here every night. I know some of you were here on Monday, some of you were here yesterday, and then a lot of you watched the replays. So continue to watch, continue to share. I appreciate it. The candidates appreciate it. And most importantly, we need to know who the people are who are representing us in public office. And this is a way to do that. So tonight, my first guest is Magistrate Caryln Addison. She is running for Criminal Court Division 5. And Magistrate Addison, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your current position?
Okay, well, my name is Caryln Addison, as you indicated. I am currently a magistrate judge at juvenile court, where I have been for the last 7 years. Prior to that, I was 4 years on the bench in environmental court as a referee, handling blight issues, traffic issues. And prior to that, 7.5 years in the public defender's office, representing indigent criminal defendants, those that are accused that cannot afford counsel. I did both general sessions work, criminal court, and yes, I also did trials in criminal court 6 with Judge John T. Folks, who's now in federal court. So I have a bit of a storied past, a little diverse, a little bit here, a little bit there, but mainly now, after the last 17 years, I've been on the bench for 11, presiding over cases, not trying them. And people like to make those distinctions. Judges don't try cases, they preside over them.
So what kinds of cases do you hear now as a juvenile court magistrate?
Let's start. I want to start with my Mondays. My Mondays are, okay, so I do detention. Anytime a child comes into custody, their cases have to be heard within a time certain. Tuesdays, I do preliminary hearings, which are motions, foster care, dependency and neglect, child abuse cases, custody and visitation, paternity, establishment of, contempt of court, child support, and delinquency and truancy. I am your truancy champion, national truancy champion of 2019. Before the pandemic hit, I was honored with that great national award. I'm very proud of it because we need children in schools and in seats.
So let's talk a little bit more about truancy. I handle a lot of delinquency cases, children who get charged with offenses that would be criminal offenses if they were adults. And most of the time, they are not in school. So what can we say to parents when it comes to truancy and how they can make sure that their children are in school?
You know, that there's two answers to that. The first part is pre-COVID, you really had no excuse. School starts on a date certain. It does not start Labor Day. And you need to have your child enrolled and attending. Anything over 10 days will get you basically called to the principal's office and quite possibly on my docket, especially if you are a habitual offender and your children don't go to school. Post-COVID, everything was just really confused. It was a confusing time for everyone. Even myself as a parent, I didn't know how I was going to best educate. And he still needed to get the education. We still needed to figure out what to do. But post-COVID, you had a lot of people fearful of sending their child into school, but you also had parents who weren't technologically inclined to charge a device, log in a device, and make certain, they're working or they're trying to survive. So it was difficult post-COVID. But what we're seeing now is more people are beginning to understand that we're opening up, we've opened, and your child needs to be in school with proper safeguards if necessary. Here's the thing. When your child is not in school, you've got to ask yourself, and I certainly ask, what are they doing? This is the next generation of people we need to educate and have as good citizens in this community contributing. And if you've on a 5th grade reading level and you're 16, that's a problem for your future. Education is key. Knowledge is power.
Thank you. And I hope the parents are listening. And also, can parents potentially go to jail for not sending
Oh,
their children to school?
I had truancy this morning, and every time I have to read them their affidavit and the statute and tell them that contributing to the educational neglect of a minor and parental educational neglect carries up to 11 months and 29 days, and quite possibly at the minimum 30 days for a separate C misdemeanor, they are shocked. I said, do you realize that your child has the keys to the jail? Especially if they're over like 14 and you're dropping them off every day. You need to be mindful of the fact that you could quite possibly, and I say you could face incarceration, although I'm not suggesting that's what will happen. You need to understand what's on the line. It is a compulsory attendance law.
Thank you. Also, lately I've become more aware of sex trafficking with children. And I know that you have extensive training in this area. A lot of times I've found that parents have no idea that this is happening. So, what can we tell parents and other community members, family members about child sex trafficking? Because it's happening in Shelby County.
It is happening so much that Judge Michael allowed me to create a special docket. I have a special docket where I hear cases involving domestic child sex trafficking. I am certified by the National Council of Juvenile Court and Family Judges in domestic child sex trafficking. And when I tell you that was an eye-opening experience, just the training, I went for about a week. There were things that we don't know we're seeing that our children are going through. If you see something, you kind of have to say something. If your child is showing up at home with, new hair, new eyelashes, new clothes, they have friends you can't even begin to identify on a good day, you need to start asking yourself those questions about who are they with, where are they going. You need to check devices. You need to check social media. We have to be vigilant because our children are under attack. And that's me saying someone in a home with responsible adults. Imagine you're in the foster care system and you're being bumped around and bumped around. Foster care children are more vulnerable because there's not one person that's watching what that child is doing. And those children have grown to understand that their body is attached to a check. So if I stay in this foster home and I know my foster parent gets X amount of dollars, why don't I just take that out and earn it for myself? It's a very complicated, multi-layered issue of vulnerability and being able to see those red flags. And I am acutely aware, sometimes painfully so, when I see a child just come in on a regular domestic assault, and I tilt my head and I bring the lawyers in the breakout room and I say, do we need to have a different conversation? And they know that I know that child is in the life and that child has basically fending for themselves, and for lack of a better term, could quite possibly be considered like a feral child raising themselves because no one's paying attention. Memphis is a hub. We've got Arkansas, Mississippi. We've got all of these border states where a child can be trafficked over state lines. Be mindful of what your children are doing. I cannot stress that enough.
Thank you. So you're a juvenile court magistrate. You've been a magistrate in environmental court, and now you are running for criminal court, Division 5. So why have you decided to run for this position?
First of all, and I say this when I talk to people, hurt people hurt people. Once you understand the origins of domestic violence and how these things occur, you can better address it. What I don't think we do enough of as a society, and this is not an indictment on any judge or prosecutor or just the system, we don't address the societal ills and how we have come to this position. Here's the thing. If you've experienced as a child exposure to domestic violence, how likely are you to repeat those behaviors? You don't understand conflict resolution. You saw your mom slap your dad around. You saw your mom beat you with an extension cord. Domestic violence and just the response in violence, adverse childhood experiences, those children grow up. And that's how they tend to respond when confronted, or if there's conflict, or they're unhappy, or they're angry. I chose domestic violence not only because of what I've done the last few years at juvenile court, but Because I'm sorry, you want to say
Well,
something?
I wanted to clarify something because there is a domestic violence court in General Sessions Court,
Mhm.
which is Division 10.
Right.
Then the cases that get indicted from Division 10 go upstairs or to criminal court Division 5.
Right.
Correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's
So
exactly
Division 5 is a specialty criminal court.
right. That's exactly right. I don't think people, and if you're not well versed in the 201 lingo, you don't know that yes, Criminal Court Division 5 is assigned to handle domestic violence cases. Professionally, I know that I can do the work. I've done the work and I've seen it in one lens. Personally, my family suffered a tragic loss due to domestic violence in November 10th, 2011. And I lost my niece to domestic violence. And I know what it felt like, even as a lawyer, to navigate that difficult space with my brother having lost his firstborn at the hands of her boyfriend while she was sleeping. This is not only personal for me, it's something that I've endured as a survivor, having lost someone near and dear. My 19-year-old niece was murdered, she was killed. And I'm doing this for her because I understand not only from the public defender side how people can be accused, but they deserve their day in court, but also for the victims who are no longer here and deserve a voice.
Thank you. Now, a lot of people may not know, but you are the daughter-in-law of former state representative Lois DeBerry. Can you talk about how her legacy has informed your career and your work and your push for justice?
You know, people would ask me about Lois when she was here, and she's been gone for a few years, but the mother-in-law I had was not State Representative Lois DeBerry. She was Granny. She was Lois. She was Low D. And Lois taught me so much about being a wife, mother, a servant in general, just watching her, campaigning with her, knocking on doors with her. We are called here to lead. We are called here to serve, and it's not about us. And I think what is most important about what I took from that relationship and everything that she gave us, me, just as the woman married to her only child, she imparted such great wisdom. And every move I ever made, I'd run it by Lois. I go, so what do you think about? And she was never shy about pulling in young people, advocating for yourself, and basically being a part of the system. We can't criticize a system we're not a part of.
Thank you. What do you feel are some of the major challenges facing criminal justice in this country, but more particularly in Memphis?
In Memphis, what I see is, we can't ignore the fact that poverty is an issue. Access to justice is an issue. A lot of people don't, and I see this at work daily, they don't feel like they're going to be heard. You get summons to court and you sit there. We go to court every day, so it's kind of natural to us, but you've got to understand John Q. Public comes in and it's just like, what is even happening? And as judges, you've got to be very careful on how you treat those people. I think that once we understand and appreciate that we are serving different walks of lives, right? We are serving people from different religious, racial, socioeconomic backgrounds, and we've got to be mindful of those differences. We cannot rubber stamp every single case that comes before us. And I think that's a challenge. Yes, the law is black and white, it's very clear, but we have to use our discretion, which is afforded to us as judges, and be considerate of what people are going through. The system could bear some changes. It's not perfect. I mean, it's run by imperfect humans. We're not perfect. So we're running a system, I think, that could use some tweaking, could use some updates, and could use some fresh eyes, fresh passion. That's what I think.
And also, you too are a graduate of Xavier University in New Orleans, Louisiana.
I am.
And at Xavier, we always learned about service, how to be a better servant. So, in the context of service, how do you see your role as a judge?
it goes back to, again, listening with both ears. And, I've been accused of cutting people off. I have. I'm guilty. But once I hear what I need to hear for a case, I'm always trying to figure out how to best address everyone and how to give everyone what they need, whether it's custody, whether it's a child that's trafficked, whether it's a child in foster care who's sleeping on the floor. How can I best serve you? I get up every day after getting beat down in court and I say, I got to get out here and help somebody. Not that I'm special, but this is what I've been tasked with. This is what I enjoy doing, serving people, helping people, especially these babies and these families, reuniting families, building families up, encouraging parents to get back on the right path. That's what, my foundation was Xavier, right? And once I left high school and I went to Xavier, and it was, you know what it was like. Don't walk on the grass, do this, the nuns were there. I mean, that was a foundation upon which I have built everything that I learned at Xavier.
Do you have any closing words for our listeners? We're almost out of time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm a lawyer. I talk. We need to get souls to the polls. July 15th, early voting starts. You vote with your voice. Again, you cannot criticize a system you're not a part of. You've got to vote. You've got to know who you're voting for. This is the longest ballot ever in Shelby County history. And
wow.
if you cannot remember anything, if you have any questions or concerns, remember Addison is the answer. Criminal Court Division 5.
Thank you. Thank you, Magistrate Addison. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you for having me.
Good night. All right. Thank you to Magistrate Addison. As she stated, she is running for Criminal Court Division 5, and early voting once again starts this Friday, July 15th. My next guest is the Honorable Betty Thomas Moore. Are you there, Judge?
I am here.
How are you?
All is well. Look, I was trying to get on my husband's desktop computer, but it wouldn't let me in. So I had to find my little Surface, but I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here.
And I love your hair. One of the last times we spoke, you told me that you were going natural and you were trying different things with your hair. So I love it.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'm still kind of wading in the water and trying to figure out what fits, what looks good, because we like our hair to look good. And so far, I think I finally have found the right person.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, can you tell us what your current position is and the position, you're running for re-election.
That's correct.
And
that's right.
Tell us what that is and what some of your responsibilities are.
Well, I am presently serving as the judge in Division 5. Let me take my glasses off, and maybe that will help. But usually I have to have glasses, but there's that glare I can't seem to get rid of. But I presently serve as judge in Division 5 of General Sessions Civil Court. I've been blessed to be in that position for almost 24 years. And General Sessions Civil Court is located in the old courthouse at 140 Adams. I always tell them it's the pretty courthouse with the beautiful statues and everything. I mean, it's over 100 years old, and it is our first courthouse that we've ever had in Shelby County. And so we're located on that first floor. And what we do over there in General Sessions Civil Court is handle all kinds of lawsuits valued at $25,000 or less. And I have to tell people too that we're not a small claims court, because many people do come into that court representing themselves. I always say probably about maybe half of the cases that we have, could be a little bit higher, people are coming in representing themselves. But when you come in to represent yourself, you have to know the laws, rules, and procedures, just like lawyers. And I instruct people that you can have a good case, but lose a good case because you don't know what to do. So it's a more formal court than a small claims court. And so we handle car accident cases, any kind of lawsuit that you could possibly imagine where you're asking for less than $25,000, eviction cases, a lot of eviction cases, debt collection cases, and we also handle involuntary mental health commitments, repossessions, replevins. So we handle lots of cases. And as a matter of fact, we are the highest volume court in Shelby County. And well, not in Shelby, but in the state of Tennessee. Our court handles more cases than any others as it relates to those civil cases being filed in our General Sessions Civil Court.
So I want to talk more about people representing themselves. So in criminal court, we know that everybody has a right to a free lawyer. So if you can't afford a lawyer will be given to you for free. And that's not the case with a civil matter. Right. So if someone is being evicted or someone is being sued by a furniture store or a credit card company or a hospital for a bill or anything like that, and they say, I want to challenge this, I don't have enough money to hire a lawyer to represent me, what are some of the things that they need to know?
They need to know that, as you said, we don't appoint attorneys, because I do have a lot of people who come in and said, I just want to know if you can appoint an attorney to me. And I have to tell them, you don't have that right, that constitutional right, like you would in a criminal case. You have a right to represent yourself, but not to be appointed to an attorney. And then I go through that spiel, as I was telling you earlier, about letting people know what some of the rules and regulations are. And as a matter of fact, I have created what I call guidelines and information for people who represent themselves. And what that provides to individuals are some basic rules and regulations, some basic laws that I hope will help them to do one or two things. If they're in a position to hire an attorney, to hire a lawyer. Most people don't want a lawyer. They want to do it themselves. Then to read it, understand the process as much as you can, and perhaps do a little bit additional research with Google or even the law library to really try to educate yourself. Because to me, when people come in, I tell them, I say, if you're here for $5, $50, $500, it's your money. And you're here because you're wanting to get whatever it is that you're asking for. So be prepared. I also, besides trying to provide people with some reading information, I also try to refer them to legal services, because, as you know, legal services has always been available to help people handle civil cases, represent people with civil cases where they are income and case eligible. But right now, with legal services in transition from moving from one place to the other, losing some funding, losing staff, that has been kind of difficult getting attorneys appointed. And then, of course, we also have what we call an attorney of the day program, where lawyers donate their time for free pro bono to represent people in court. So there are some resources that are available. But like I said, most people feel like I can do this. I can do this myself. I know what I need to do. And unfortunately, by the time I give them the information and they come to court, it's still a bit frustrating, not only for them, but for the court too, because they really don't have all that they need, all of the tools that they need, all the know-how that they would need to handle their cases. So I want people to know to really, really prepare yourself if you're going to represent yourself, understanding that lawyers are not appointed. You don't have that constitutional right in a civil case.
So I can imagine that you have been tasked with making some very tough decisions when it comes to people's lives, especially if somebody is being evicted and they're saying, I don't have anywhere else to go, but maybe they haven't paid rent in, 4 or 5 months. So how do you balance that when making your decisions about people's lives?
Those are some of the most difficult cases to handle. There are several, but those are the most difficult, because when you have people that are being evicted, put out of their homes, as you know, and especially in this day and age when we're kind of still in COVID, but it's not as bad as it was. I mean, you're still having people who are being evicted, and the rent is horrible now. It's sky high. People are not really finding places to go to. And so being on the bench for almost 24 years, one thing that I am grateful for is relationship with a lot of the attorneys that come in, and a lot of the landlords who represent themselves, who come in, and as I am handling a case and as I am talking to the litigants, if most of the times people haven't paid their rent in several months, they've lost a job, or for whatever the reason may be, they're just not able to pay rent. And I do get a lot of people who come in who have stopped paying rent because they're having issues with repairs. And they don't realize that in Tennessee, you can't stop paying your rent like that. There are other options that are available that you can use when your landlord isn't making the required repairs. And so with that relationship with lawyers and landlords that come in, if I have to tell someone that my hands are tied by the law, because the law says that if the proof shows that you owe rent, and to be honest, 8 times out of 10, the tenant will tell you, well, Judge, yeah, I owe the money, but I lost my job, or but this or that happened. And they'll admit that, but they just want some mercy. And so I have to tell them that the law is real clear that if you owe, then your landlord has a right to get possession of the property and to get the money. But with that relationship, I can make my little spiel about the fact that the law says you got 10 days to move before you can be evicted. And unless the landlord will give you a few more days. And I'll say, well, the landlord can do that, but it's up to the landlord. Well, probably 9 times out of 10, the lawyers that have know that we want to give folk a little grace. And if you can give them just a few more days, 9 times out of 10, they'll give them, well, Judge, okay, I can do about 15 days rather than 10. And sometimes all people want just a few more days. And so you tweak the law. I do as a judge, as close as I can get, and as close as I can get to getting some help from the plaintiffs who know that Judge Moore it will follow the law. But if I can give a little bit more time, I don't mind doing that. And I have had some who said, well, Judge, I really want possession. And I'll say, no problem with that. And I'll talk a little bit more with the tenant. And then I try to provide other resources. I used to be able to order, to refer people to MIFA and other agencies that would help out with housing, even some landlords who may have property available. So using those kinds of resources to give to individuals who have to move no matter what. Sometimes they'll go to family, they'll go to friends. But it gets difficult when you do have a tenant who comes in who has a family and children who have to move and don't really have the funds or the monies, and you send them to MIFA, you send them to CSA, you send them to churches and other programs that may very well be able to help out. And those tenants leave out of the courtroom. They may leave out saying, you know what, I really didn't want to have to move, but I feel like they have left out understanding that Judge Moore did everything that she could and then some, because she gave us some resources. She gave us a few more days in conjunction with the landlord, and I can work with that. And they leave out just feeling a little bit better about the process.
That's good to know. So you've been on the bench for 24 years?
24 come September. Yeah.
So why are you running for re-election? 24 years is a long time, and you want to do it some more. Why is that?
Well, I want to do some more because my journey is not finished. I tell people, and when you hear me talk about being on the bench, I tell people that I serve, and that's what I'm doing as the judge in Division 5 of General Sessions Civil Court. I serve the people who have elected me. And one good thing about being there for almost 24 years is that when you do develop relationships with the lawyers and the litigants that come in, so that where you can give grace in particular cases, you're able to do that because over a little bit of time, the lawyers will come in, the litigants will come in, and they'll know that body language of the judge. And they'll know that I'm going to be fair, that if they say, yeah, I can do a little bit more, because most of them can, and some of them can, and some of them don't want to, which is fine too. And they know that if they tell me, Judge, well, I don't really want to do that, I can't do that, I ain't mad at you, because you have a right to say no. You have an opportunity to say yes. And if you don't take it, no problem. We're going to do exactly what the law tells us to do, without bend, without grade, without shade. And we'll go from there. And then I jump into my resource mode to try to see if there is something else to do. I've got more to do. I feel like my time will end, but it's not now. So I'm running, and I'm running hard to stay so that I can finish my journey, so that I can finish my task and then move on to something else. I'll tell you, with a lot of debt collection cases that we have, I get a lot of seniors that come in. And the seniors that come in, they don't have any money. All they have is their Social Security or their small check to survive off of. And they've signed a bond, co-signed a bond, or signed a bond. They've co-signed on a car, an apartment, or whatever else. And now they're responsible, and they're being coming to court. They have oxygen tanks, they're in wheelchairs, they're on walkers, or they're able to come in on their own, but they have no money. And this is another thing where the lawyers that come in, who've been doing this for a long time, and they're reading the judge and they're listening to me, and I'm saying, well, Miss So-and-so, I hear what you're saying about your income. Let's see, lawyer, this is the first setting. Can we provide some information? Miss So-and-so, have you got some documentation to show what your income is? Yeah, Judge, I've got my paperwork showing my Social Security. Well, let's reset this case. And lawyer, let's reset it to give Miss So-and-so an opportunity to provide documentation to show what her income is. If you can take it to your client, perhaps this is one of those cases that they can possibly dismiss, or maybe settle it out, or do something that would resolve the case, because you don't want the seniors to even have a judgment hanging over their head. That's stressful. Seniors are the ones that want to pay those bills. And when they can't pay their bills, they worry tremendously with that hanging over their heads. And probably 10 times out of 10, and I hold the case in my courtroom, because as you know, there are 6 of us and our cases will float. But I say, come back to me, because I know what I'm doing with this case. And it never fails. The lawyer will come back, having gotten that information, and said, creditor, this is what we're looking at. Is this one of those cases that we can do? And they're big companies. Most times they're big companies that we can do something. They'll come back and dismiss it. It never fails. And the seniors are so excited and so glad. And I'm happy for them, because they don't have that bill and they don't have the debt hanging over their heads, thinking, I'm just pitiful. I can't even pay my bills, but it's done. And so those are the kind of things that are part of my service, where I can do something. I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be impartial. But surely there are other things that I'm grateful as a judge that I am able to do, and I'm able to do it. And I'm thankful to the lawyers and the other litigants that work with me.
Well, Judge, thank you for your 24 years of service to the community. And then I know even before that, before you were on the bench, you were at the public defender's office. So you've been doing this work for a long time.
Serving a long time, Attorney Turner, a long time. Even with your dad, he served a long time.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing some very helpful information with the listeners. And I hope that everybody goes out to vote
Yes.
early. Election day, if you don't vote early, vote August 4th. Thank you again, Judge.
Well, can I just say that if there's any additional information that your listeners want to know about me, please just go to www.judgebettythomasmore, www.judgebettythomasmore. Know that I'm always available. You can call the office. If you need me to send to you that information, I'll be happy to do that with the guidelines. It's always ready and available.
Good. I was going to ask you about that. So you have guidelines for people who represent themselves in court, so they can just call to your office and be able to get that information.
If they call and they're thinking about filing a lawsuit, or they're in a lawsuit, if they don't have that in hand, yes, 901-222-3447, 901-222-3447, and just say, I'd like to get that information, guidelines for, because I'm going to represent myself. And Ms. McElhaney, the executive assistant, she'll know what is needed and get that information for me, and we'll send it right out.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much. I appreciate you having me.
You're
Have a
welcome.
blessed one.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. All right. Thank you to Judge Betty Thomas Moore. She is in General Sessions Civil Division 5, Sessions Criminal Division 13. And are you there, Terrance?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Turn your volume up just a little bit.
Only up just a little. Okay, how's that?
Okay, that's good. All right. So if you can introduce yourself and tell us what kind of work you're doing now.
So I'm Terrance Tatum. I have been a public defender for the last 21 years. I am currently one of the supervisors in General Sessions Court, and I've been about a supervisor for about the last 10 years. I've handled the most cases as in anyone in the public defender's office in the last fiscal year. Did you know that?
More than anyone in the whole public defender's office?
More than anyone in the entire public defender's office. Yes.
Okay.
I handled almost 900 cases in the last fiscal year.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. The closest person outside of Nell Palmer, she and I had a little competition and I edged her out down the stretch with the number of cases that I've had. Because I handle cases in the outlying courts in Caryln for the public defender's office as well. As then I have a full caseload downtown in the 3 divisions that I supervise, which is 10, 12, and Division 15.
So, General Sessions Criminal Court, this is a countywide election, correct?
That's
so
correct.
Everybody, Lakeland, Caryln, Germantown, Bartlett,
Arlington,
yes.
Everyone can vote, and I don't want people to get confused about the divisions of court, because people think that the county is separated by the divisions of court and they can't vote in my division, or they like to refer to it as district. No,
Oh, okay.
it's every division can be voted on by everybody in Shelby County.
Yes, I'm glad you made that distinction, because with county commission and school board, there are different districts, so I can see how people will become confused. So what kinds of cases would come before you as a General Sessions Court judge?
So Division 13, which is one of the reasons why I'm running for Division 13. It's a court that handles any type of case that you get arrested for. So if you get arrested, your case could ended up in Division 13. If you're indicted, then of course your case will go directly to criminal court. But if you're arrested, your case you can be brought to Division 13, and that's anything from a disorderly conduct or criminal trespassing, as small as that, all the way up to a first-degree murder case. If you're arrested, you can be brought to Division 13. Now, it's not a specialty court. It's not a domestic violence court, which is in Shelby County. It's by law has to be in Division 10. It's not the new mental health court. It's not the veterans court. It's not the drug court. So it's just a general court that handles any type of crime that someone may be arrested for.
So what types of cases do you handle and have you handled as a lawyer?
So the great thing about me, I've handled every case as a lawyer. I've handled the criminal the minuscule criminal trespassing case that we all have had, all the way up to I've had criminal attempt first degree murder cases, and I've the best part about my experience is that I've had trials that I've sat for in criminal court, even though I'm primarily assigned to work in general sessions. I've been called upon by colleagues to assist in trials in criminal court, where I've had a dozen trials maybe over the course of the 21 years I've been there.
So what are some of the challenges that you see facing the justice system, and then more particular, the justice system in Memphis?
The challenge in facing the justice system itself is the lack of trust in the justice system. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that it has right now because um, people are starting to see that which has been complained about for a long time. And the only difference with what's going on now and what's went on for 50 years ago is the invention of the cell phone. I mean, everyone has a cell phone now. Everyone's recording what's going on now. So before, when people say these things were happening to them, they had no way to prove it, and you had to. No one would believe them that these things were happening for them. And then, but now, since the advent of the cell phone and everyone got a camera and a camera phone, you're actually starting to see that. Wait a minute, okay, those stories that we hear, those they're true. That this stuff really goes on. So now people are having to explain their actions a lot more as opposed to what happened in the past, where uh, people make complaints and no one would ever believe what was going on. That was what was going on.
So, how can we build trust in the community?
I think the way to build trust in the community is to open up the court system so that people can see what's going on down there. I mean, I think that if people want to come in and watch what goes on, I think the court system should be more open. It should be more electronic. People should be able to click on a screen and see what's going on inside of a courtroom, absent the unusual circumstances where we have to close court for a very sensitive issue. But people should be able to look and see what's going on, how their tax dollars are being spent, how what's going on in the court system, so that they can have more trust in it.
I want to talk about efficiency and the court system. So, of course, over the past 2 years, we saw that we can be creative when it comes to how we handle business. And prior to the pandemic, a lot of times it was a bit chaotic on the lower level of 201 Poplar, where the General Sessions courts are. It was chaotic for judges. I mean, for defendants, people who had cases on the docket, and for lawyers representing these people. But I've seen it become a little bit more efficient lately. So, where do you see efficiency as it relates to the criminal justice system um, in General Sessions Court, and how you plan to make your court efficient if you're elected?
Well, I think the you saw where the efficiency came in because they realized that we didn't have to do things the same way we've been doing them for the 21 years that I've been there. I think COVID made us all become more open to conducting business in a different manner. I think it's more efficient to have only the litigants in the courthouse whose cases are going to be disposed of. Okay, if you're being arraigned for your case, sure you need to be there. If you're but if you're just gonna, if your case is just going to be reset because it's not going, to then there's no reason to have that person take off work just to come down there just to say they appeared and then they were told their case been reset. But that's inefficient. That's not because our clients, most of the clients that we represent in the public defender's office, are hard pressed to make sure that they can maintain employment. So to make them come to work court once a month just to get the case reset, well, that's just. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all to do that. Now, should these cases be reset multiple times? I don't think that should be the case. I think that we should be having a clear line path on what we're trying to do to dispose of these cases, as opposed to just standardly resetting cases over and over again.
Now, some of your campaign keywords are wisdom, transparency, and experience. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that my 21 years being down there has given me the experience of handling every type of case that can come through the doors. I've handled robbery cases. I've handled uh, criminal trespassing cases. I've handled second degree murder cases. I've handled disorderly conduct cases. I've handled all the domestic violence cases. I've handled all those type of cases, aggravated assaults. So that experience is invaluable because I've handled them from a standpoint of not only seeing from the victim's eyes, but also from the defendant's eyes. So because we as attorneys and in the public defense office, we have to talk to people as a part of our job in determining the facts of a case. We have to talk to the complaining witnesses to find out just what exactly happened in these cases. So I've had a chance to talk to them from different points of view. Um, my wisdom just come from the age and the time that I've been there, and the fact that I've had young men that I've raised to know and to understand what goes on in the experiences of the young men and women that you see in court these days. I haven't just gone from 201 to my home in Collierville back to 201. I made some stops along the way. Okay, and I've had a chance to have a lot of experiences with a lot of young men through sports because my sons played football and basketball and baseball. So I had a chance to actually give back to touch the lives of a lot of young men who they all call me one name to this very day. It's not Terrance, it's not Tatum, it's just Coach. That's how they all know me as just Coach. And even young men who have gone on, they have their own families now, they're living their life. For the majority of them all being very productive citizens. I mean, there's a couple bad ones in every bunch, okay, but yeah, for the majority of them, a couple are all productive citizens, but they all refer to me as one thing, Coach. And so I feel like that kind of wisdom I can be able to pass on to to continue to pass on because I continue to be involved in the community.
And I know one of your sons is a professional baseball player, correct?
That is correct. I have one son that's a professional baseball player, one son that works for a professional baseball organization. So
Okay.
I have two sons in Major League Baseball. Then I have
Okay.
my oldest son is an engineer for the city of Memphis.
Oh,
So
okay.
so they all went to college on a baseball scholarship. They all played baseball in college. So it's it was an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything because that spending the time with them, having a job that gave me an opportunity to spend the time with them was one of the reasons why I've maintained myself at the public defender's office for as long as I have because it did give me a chance to go to the ball games and be there for my children, which I thought that's family first. That's the most important thing.
Well, excellent. Do you have any closing words?
My closing words is that in 2022, if we still are having the same issues and the same problems that we've had when I started in 2001, then it's a clear time to change. And I know every candidate who's trying to win a race, that's what they all want to say. It's time for a change, okay? But I'm asking people to look at themselves and say, hey, am I happy with what we have right now? Okay, am I happy with the situation we're in right now? Am I happy with the way things are being done right now? I think that with the onset of the new and fresh ideas that I hope to bring to the court system, the ability to um, work with both the prosecutors and the defense, I'm hoping that people will see that hey, Terrance Tatum is the person to get behind. Terrance Tatum is the guy that I want to lead Division 13 on for the next 8 years.
Well, thank you so much, Terrance, for joining me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with our listeners. And good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. That's all. Good night.
Yeah, bye bye.